My sister stole my quilt design at the craft fair, then I showed sketches that shamed her. I poured my heart into my quilt, trusting my sister's support until she claimed it as her own at the town's craft fair, threatening my dream, only for me to unveil sketches that exposed her lies and reclaimed my art in front of everyone. The air of the Willow Creek Craft Fair buzzed with anticipation, a heady mix of fresh-baked pies, the hum of conversation, and the rustle of autumn leaves skittering across the town square. Rows of white tents lined the park, each one bursting with handmade treasures, pottery, jewelry, knitted scarves, and, of course, quilts. My booth, tucked near the old oak tree, was my pride and joy. For months, I'd toiled over my centerpiece, a quilt I called Whispers of Dawn. Its intricate patchwork wove together soft pinks, golds, and blues, mimicking a sunrise over the rolling hills of our small town. Every stitch was a piece of me, hours of late nights, pricked fingers, and dreams of turning my passion into a livelihood. This fair was my chance to shine, to catch the eye of local shop owners and maybe even the regional craft guild. But as I arranged my booth, my sister, Leela, stood nearby, smiling a little too brightly, her eyes darting to my quilt with a gleam I should have noticed. Leela and I had always been close, or so I thought. Growing up in our cozy, chaotic household, we'd shared everything: secrets, clothes, even half-finished art projects. She was the outgoing one, the charmer who could talk her way into or out of anything. I was the quiet one, the dreamer, content to lose myself in fabric and thread. Quilting had been my refuge since I was a teenager, a way to process the world through patterns and colors. Leela, on the other hand, preferred the spotlight. She dabbled in crafts over the years, mostly copying my ideas, a scarf here, a painting there, but I never minded. She was my sister, and I loved her. When she begged to help at my booth for the fair, I was thrilled. "I'll handle the customers," she'd said, tossing her auburn hair. "You focus on your art." I trusted her. That was my first mistake. The morning of the fair, the square filled with locals and tourists, their voices mingling with the twang of a bluegrass band playing near the gazebo. My booth drew a steady stream of admirers, their fingers tracing the edges of Whispers of Dawn as they marveled at its detail. The quilt was more than just fabric, it was a story. Each square represented a moment in my life: a golden patch for the summer I spent volunteering at the community garden, a blue swirl for the night I stayed up watching a meteor shower, a pink diamond for the day I adopted my cat, Luna. I'd spent months sketching the design, experimenting with patterns, and sourcing sustainable fabrics from local vendors. The quilt was my heart laid bare, and the crowd's reactions, gasps, whispers, even a few teary eyes told me it resonated. By noon, the judges from the Regional Craft Guild arrived, their clipboards and serious expressions signaling the start of the competition. A win could mean a feature in their annual showcase, a contract with a high-end boutique, or even an invitation to teach workshops. I was nervous but hopeful, adjusting Whispers of Dawn on its display stand as the judges approached. Leela, stationed at the front of the booth, greeted them with her megawatt smile. "Welcome," she said, gesturing grandly to the quilt. "This is my creation, Whispers of Dawn. It's been a labor of love, my heart stopped, my creation." I stood frozen behind the table, my hands clutching a stack of business cards. The judges nodded, impressed, as Leela launched into a story about her inspiration, how she'd spent months designing the quilt, drawing from her love of nature and her childhood in Willow Creek. Every word was a lie, but she delivered it with such conviction that even I almost believed her. The crowd around the booth grew, drawn by her charisma. A woman in a red scarf asked about her process, and Leela spun a tale about late nights at her sewing machine, her fingers bleeding from the effort. I wanted to scream, to interrupt, but the words caught in my throat. The judges were scribbling notes, and the crowd was eating it up. If I called her out now, I'd look like a jealous sibling throwing a tantrum. I needed proof, something undeniable. My mind raced to the sketchbook in my tote bag, buried under a pile of fabric swatches. That sketchbook was my lifeline, For years, I documented every project in initial sketches, color palettes, fabric samples, even notes on stitching techniques. For Whispers of Dawn, I'd filled dozens of pages with detailed drawings, each one dated and annotated in my looping handwriting. There were sketches from January, when I first envisioned the sunrise motif, and fabric tests from March, when I settled on the final palette. I even had a photo taped inside, showing me pinning the quilt's first squares in my attic studio, timestamped 6 months ago. Leela had only seen the finished quilt 2 weeks earlier when she'd stopped by to check on my progress. That's when she must have decided to claim it. I slipped to the back of the booth, my hands shaking as I dug through my tote. The sketchbook was there, its worn leather cover a familiar comfort. I flipped through it, double-checking the dates and notes. Everything was in order, page after page of my work, my vision, my story. But I couldn't just wave it around and yell, "She's lying." The craft fair was a tight-knit community, and drama could ruin my reputation as much as hers. I needed an ally, someone with authority who could handle this discreetly. I spotted Mrs. Callahan, the fair's organizer, near the judges' table. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s with a sharp eye for detail and a reputation for fairness. She'd known me since I was a kid, selling my first quilt at this very fair. If anyone would listen, it was her. I approached, keeping my voice low. "Mrs. Callahan, can we talk privately?" She raised an eyebrow but followed me to a quiet corner near the food stalls. I opened my sketchbook, showing her the progression of Whispers of Dawn. "This is my quilt," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "Leela's claiming it as hers, but these sketches prove it's mine. I've been working on it for months." She only saw it 2 weeks ago. Mrs. Callahan studied the pages, her expression unreadable. She lingered on the dated sketches, the fabric samples, the photo of me in my studio. Finally, she nodded. "This is thorough. And it's your handwriting. I'd recognize it anywhere. Why would Leela do this?" "She's always taken credit for my work," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "But this time, it's my future on the line. I need to set this right without making a scene." Mrs. Callahan's eyes softened, but her tone was firm. "I'll handle it. Stay calm and let me do the talking." She returned to the judges' table, where Leela was still charming the crowd. I stayed back, my sketchbook clutched to my chest, watching as Mrs. Callahan whispered to the head judge, a stern woman named Miss Harper. The two exchanged a few words, and Miss Harper glanced at Leela, then at me. My stomach churned. What if they didn't believe me? What if Leela's charm won them over, but Mrs. Callahan was already moving toward my booth, her clipboard in hand. "Leela," she said, her voice cutting through the crowd's chatter, "your quilt is stunning. Can you share more about your design process? Perhaps some preliminary sketches or notes." The judges love seeing the journey behind a piece. Leela's smile froze. She glanced at me, then back at Mrs. Callahan, her confidence wavering. "Well, I don't have my sketches with me. It's all up here," she said, tapping her temple. The crowd murmured, sensing something off. Miss Harper stepped forward, her expression skeptical. "That's unusual. Most quitlers document their work extensively. I recall seeing sketches for a similar quilt last spring when I visited a local artist's studio." The crowd turned to me, then back to Leela. Her face flushed, but she tried to recover. "We collaborated on it. It was a joint effort." Her voice cracked, and I knew she was grasping at straws. I couldn't stay silent anymore. I stepped forward, holding up my sketchbook. "Mrs. Callahan, Miss Harper, I have the sketches right here." My voice was calm but clear, carrying across the booth. I opened the book to a page dated January 15th, showing the first draft of Whispers of Dawn. "These are my designs. Every sketch, every note, every sample, dated and signed. I worked on this quilt alone for 9 months. Leela saw it for the first time 2 weeks ago. I handed the sketchbook to Miss Harper, who flipped through it with the other judges. The crowd pressed closer, craning their necks to see. Whispers spread like wildfire. her sketches. Dated. She worked on it alone. Ms. Harper held up a page with a photo of me pinning squares in my studio. This is time-stamped February 10th, she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. And these notes are consistent with the quilt's design. Can you explain this, Leela? Leela's mouth opened, but no words came. Her eyes darted to the crowd, then to me, pleading for a way out. But there was none. The evidence was undeniable. Mrs. Callahan took the sketchbook, showing it to a few onlookers, including a local boutique owner who'd been eyeing my work. This is remarkable documentation, she said. It's clear who the true artist is. The crowd's mood shifted from admiration to disapproval. A man in a plaid jacket muttered, "That's Lo stealing her sister's work." A woman next to him nodded, her arms crossed. Leela's charm had evaporated, replaced by a tense silence. Miss Harper addressed the crowd. "It appears there's been a misunderstanding. Whispers of Dawn is the work of one artist, and the evidence confirms it. Let's celebrate her talent." The rest of the day was a whirlwind. The judges awarded Whispers of Dawn first place in the quilt category, praising its originality and craftsmanship. The boutique owner offered me a contract to sell my designs in her shop, and a guild representative invited me to teach a workshop at their next showcase. Strangers approached me, apologizing for the mix-up, praising my work, asking about my process. Leela slipped away during the awards ceremony, her face pale, her usual confidence gone. I didn't chase her. I didn't need to. The sketches had spoken louder than any argument could. That night, as I packed up my booth, Mrs. Callahan stopped by. "You handled that with grace," she said. "Your work speaks for itself, but your preparation saved it." I thanked her, my throat tight with gratitude. Back home, I spread Whispers of Dawn across my couch, tracing its stitches with my finger. It was more than a quilt now, it was a victory. Leela called the next day, mumbling an apology, but I kept the conversation short. She'd crossed a line, and I wasn't ready to forgive. My dream was mine again, and I'd protect it with every sketch, every stitch, every moment of truth.